Morning, everybody. Welcome to day 49 of Compassionate Response. So, actually, 49 is an auspicious number, I think, in Buddhism, because it's said that when when a person dies, that they're in the bardo, which is the state after death, for 49 days, and that's the amount of time that you can kind of talk to them. And in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, you'd be kind of helping guide them in the process after death. So it's an interesting number to be there today, because we're covering Buddhism and Science, and science would probably have a problem with that idea of being in a bardo, an intermediate state after death. Anyway, so we're going to look into this sort of thing. So today, this is one of my pet topics. I do actually have a degree in physics from Manchester University from 1977, which I didn't ever do anything with because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I didn't really want to be a practicing scientist. It's been helpful having that understanding of what science is. Becoming a Buddhist, and then seeing the whole kind of a whole debate rising up around Buddhism and science. So what we're going to be looking at today is a book called by Evan Thompson, "Why I'm Not a Buddhist." So Evan Thompson was one of three co-authors of a book written in 1992 called The Embodied Mind, and that was a game-changing book in a way the foundation of the whole idea of like Buddhism and science being kind of in some way linked. So Evan Thompson brought this book out this year, and I think it's a really important book. It's a really fantastic book. I can't recommend it highly enough, really. So what I'm going to do today is talk about the embodied mind and talk about some of the arguments in it, but also to outline some of my history with this topic. So I had some involvement in 2010 in Buddhism and Science colloquium at Oxford University. I managed to get to Oxford University to be a part of something, and to explore. So what Evan Thompson says in this book basically is that Buddhism is seen as there's something called Buddhist Exceptionalism. So it's like saying you've got science and you've got religions, but like Buddhism is somehow special. It's an exception because it's so rational. But what he does is he points to some of the consequences of that view, or the way in which maybe Buddhism is kind of fenced in a little bit and kind of defined by some people by science, so some of the more devotional or magical aspects become sidelined, and that then has a consequence. So I'm going to look at this whole area and offer some of my own thoughts on it that I've had for a while, but will be some kind of addition to what Evan Thompson's saying, hopefully. So that's later, and so what we'll do is we'll begin with some body work. So if you want to stand up, we'll do some body work. Nice to see you, Daniel. What should we do today? Well, let's do a little bit of walking meditation to start with. I think that's quite appropriate, because I think, yeah, sometimes we need to have a calmness in our psyche when we're looking at ideas. And let's move this back a bit. And I think walking quietly does that. So, all right, just begin by just standing and being aware of yourself standing. Being aware of the contact of your feet with the ground. And how it feels to be touching the ground with your feet. If you could think of an image for your feet, what are they like? Mine feel a bit like cartoon feet for some reason. You know, like kind of those really kind of bulbous sort of feet you get in cartoons. And being aware of your the contact of your body with your clothing. And the feeling of the air on your skin. Maybe being aware of your hands. What shape is your left hand making? And is there any space between your fingers? What shape are your fingers making in your left hand? And what about your right hand? What shape is that making? And how are you feeling at the moment? What's the general tone of your feeling in your chest area? And just taking that in without making a judgment about it as being good or bad. It's just what's the case. Whatever's the case. And then just noticing in your mind an anticipation of that you're going to start walking, going to start moving, but you're not doing that yet. So notice how your mind feels with the anticipation of walking. What's going on there? And then just allowing your weight to go more into your right foot, right leg, and taking a step to the left. And then shifting your weight over onto your left leg. And how does it feel for your right leg to be now kind of a little bit, still touching the ground, but a little bit in mid-air? And taking a step with your right leg. Try to have a sense of mind and body being together. I've often said this So one's not ahead of the other, one's not racing ahead of the other. And then just gently shifting your weight onto your right foot and noticing how it feels to have more of a lightness in the other leg. As you're still touching the ground with it, but it's lifting off the ground. And then turning towards the right, so we're just going in small circle, well small, maybe sort of 3 foot circles or something like that. Depends how much space you've got at home. So just keep walking slowly. Just being aware of, just like if you're doing mindfulness breathing, you'd be aware of your breath and what's happening with your breath. Here, just being aware of what's happening with your body, your whole body, as you walk, different parts of your body, changing muscular tension in the body, different parts of the body, changing sensations. And trying to tune into the structure of your body so that you're in line with that truth, so that you know where your bones are and you know where the muscles are and where the organs are. And you're not trying to make the bones do the work of the muscles or the muscles do the work of the bones, which would be a bit of delusion there. You're trying to let the muscles do the work of the muscles and the bones do the work of the bones. And you might take a few deeper breaths. So that you can breathe out tension on the out breath. And being aware of the way that your body can support your mind and emotions. To be in whatever state that they're in. So mindfulness of the body can bring us a stability to our awareness. Bring a calm to our perception. Just allow your mind to be a bit soft and maybe a bit relaxed and lazy even. So there isn't that much that needs to be done that's to do with calculating and assessing. And the mind can just allow itself to be influenced by the stillness in the body. So that whatever calculating and assessing it might do later on will be maybe a bit calmer, a bit more stable, a bit less frantic, a bit more reflective and deliberate. So we're looking for depth of thought rather than volume of thought. Or maybe speed of thought. Having a sense of not being on our own, that there are other people around the world here right now doing this walking meditation. So feeling the support of a community, all trying to be aware, all trying to make a difference by working on their own bodies and mental states. And if you feel the urge to just stop, that's okay, you do that. If you need to collect yourself together. So we're trying to honour our experience, what our intuition is telling us, as well as following some sort of practice. And being aware of whatever it is that you're looking at now. Having a sense of aesthetic appreciation of that, whatever it is you're looking at. Trying to see the humanity or even the pathos in objects. So letting the world teach us about how life is. That life is full of growth, and life is full of decay. these objects around us are often incomplete. Just as we are incomplete. And that's okay. Life is also bursting forth here, there and everywhere. And just, acknowledging how you're feeling at the moment. If you're tired, let yourself be tired. If you're sad, let yourself be sad. If you feel bright, and awake and fresh, let yourself feel fresh. Just relaxing into how things are for you. And acknowledging that we only really get somewhere when we start from where we are. coming to a standstill. And being aware that in a minute we're going to move into our meditation posture. But just giving ourselves enough time to get used to the fact that we've stopped. So we're trying to not jump over one bit of experience to get to the next bit. So it's really experiencing yourself standing here. And then maintaining the integrity of your spine. And not disturbing yourself physically. Just gradually moving into your meditation posture. And allowing the uprightness of your spine to take your weight. With a sense of lightness in your mind. Confidence that your body will support your mind. It doesn't need to be involved with your body. And then taking your attention to your breathing, your in-breath and your out-breath. So we're going to practice the mindfulness of breathing for 10 minutes in 2 stages. So we'll do the counting at the end of the out-breath in the first stage, counting at the beginning of the in-breath. Mindfulness of breathing. So noticing your breath at the centre of your experience. Noticing the sensations of the air. Coolness of the air as you breathe in and breathe out. Notice how the air is a bit warmer on the out breath, a bit cooler on the in breath. And that the breath is an actual physical experience. It's not an idea. And giving the breath some space. So stepping back, as it were, and just letting the breath be there in its own world, not constricting it, not boxing it in, just letting it be there. Breathing in, breathing out, and counting at the end of the out breath. Breathe in, breathe out, count 1. Breathe in, breathe out, count 2, and so on until you get to 10, and then start from 1 again. Just checking that you're not picking up any tension in the meditation through holding on to the breath or giving the breath plenty of space to be in its own world. Allowing it to do whatever it wants to do. So in the second stage, we move the counting to just before the breath begins. So it's counting 1 and then breathe in, breathe out. Count 2, breathe in, breathe out, so on, till we get to 10. If we get lost, we just start from 1 again. in your own time, just bringing your meditation to a close. Plug your battery in. Okay, so so today's topic is Buddhism and Science, and it's quite a lot to get through, I think, really. Anyway, so I'm just gonna try and do it at some pace. And well, maybe there is, I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So this book, Evan Thompson's "Why I'm Not a Buddhist," is came out this year, and really interesting, really fantastic. So one of the things he talks about in chapter 1 is called the myth of Buddhist exceptionalism. So what he's saying is that there's this general view around that Buddhism isn't like other religions because it's rational, and so it's an exception. And there is a popular idea that Buddhism is essentially rational and scientific. People say that Buddhism isn't so much a religion as it is a philosophy or way of life. Some scientists have described it as the most science-friendly religion. It dispenses with the concepts of God, upholds direct observation, understands things in terms of cause and effect, maintains that everything constantly changes, and says that there is no essential self or soul. The religious parts of Buddhism are supposed to be extraneous and not too difficult to remove. Once you get rid of them, you can see that Buddhism at its core is really a psychology based on meditation. Buddhist meditation isn't like prayer or other kinds of religious contemplation or ritual. It's an applied mind science. These are the reasons people give for thinking that Buddhism isn't really a religion, or that if it is, it's different from and superior to other religions. I call this way of thinking Buddhist Exceptionalism. So it says that even the staunchest scientific critics of religion give Buddhism special treatment. Richard Dawkins, author of The God Delusion, on his back cover endorsement of Buddhist biology states, Buddhism is surely religion's best shot. And Sam Harris, kind of well-known atheist, in Waking Up, A Guide to Spirituality Without Religion, writes, Buddhism without the unjustified bits is essentially a first-person science. And the Dalai Lama, even says that Buddhism is more than a religion; it's a science of the mind. So, I my history with all of this is that I started writing a book on ritual in 2003, and then after a couple of years of doing that, I shifted over to writing on mindfulness, because I thought I needed to talk about meditation if I'm talking about the atmosphere of things, if I'm talking about ritual. And then I thought I need to talk about mindfulness if I'm going to talk about meditation. So I shifted my focus onto understanding the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. So that was in 2005, and I think by 2006 or 7, I'd pretty much established a lot of the central ideas that I've expressed in these talks. I brought together conditionality and mindfulness, and was expressing that as a model. And I thought, it'd be good to actually share that thinking with the wider world. So I started to look at, and mindfulness had kind of got going by then with Jon Kabat-Zinn, his work, and so I started to think, could I share that at a conference or something? And this is what happened. So in 2008, there was a conference, the 6th International Congress of Cognitive Psychotherapy in Rome, and I submitted an abstract to give a presentation at that. So I did what's called a poster presentation, where you have a big A0 poster of your work, and you stand there for a couple of hours, and people come and talk to you about it. So I had the basic ideas from my book that are there now in that presentation in 2008, and actually I was in a talk by Jon Kabat-Zinn at the conference, and then I thought I could give out the paper that I'd written to people, and a lot of the people were. There was a conference, general behavioural psychotherapy conference, so not everybody would be interested in mindfulness, but I thought all the people in his talk would be. So I stood at the exit and gave the papers out, and I gave him one, and he said, thanks. And and we've got a common friend in Vidyamala, so I said, I'm a friend of Vidyamala's. He says, give her a hug from me. So and then later on at the conference, the thought had been in my head about scientific evidence and personal experience, and I actually asked Jon Kabat-Zinn, we just stood in the courtyard, and I said, do you think that scientific evidence really makes people practice? And like when people sort of read about Buddhism seems to meditation is proven to work, does that really make people practice? And I was thinking about the Megha Sutta, where the Buddha says that what makes people practice in a way is they see evidence of people who they want to be like. It's in their own experience of people who embodying something that really makes people want to practice ethics. So I had that in mind, and anyway, he didn't really answer me. Maybe it was a bit of a big question, really. So after that conference, I thought, I started to look at the various journals, scientific journals, and kind of see what was going on in the field, and through that I subscribed to a discussion forum, which was the Mind and Life Institute discussion forum. And through that I heard about a colloquium that was happening at Oxford University, and this was in 2010. So I went to that. I managed to get into the second day of that, and by sharing some of my thinking with the organisers, and on that it was actually it took place in a classroom, but I thought it was going to be in a big lecture theatre, but there's about 70 people in a classroom, and some of the top people in the world in that field, in the field of Buddhism and science, were in that room, and including somebody called Alan Wallace. So Alan Wallace has written this book, Embracing Mind, along with others, The Common Ground of Science and Spirituality. And one of the, so I mentioned The Embodied Mind. This is a really important book from 1992. So the key person here, in a way, was Francisco Varela, who helped found the Mind and Life Institute. And he was a cognitive scientist, a Chilean cognitive scientist. And his successor, he died of cancer in the early 2000s, and his successor was at this conference, Michel Bitbol. So people were giving presentations on Buddhism and science, so there's not a massive amount of time here to talk about it. So I think what I'll do is I'll outline some of the basic ideas in that book, in the Embodied Mind book. So the first idea, the basic idea, is something what Varela and Thompson and Rush called the fundamental circularity. So the fundamental circularities is something like this: that you have a scientist, and they're trying to observe how things are in the world and be objective, look for objective evidence about things. But what the scientist often isn't aware of, they're thinking that you can be objective about the world. But what they're not being, in a way, objective about is the fact that they have a lived experience which is embedded in the world. You know, they are in a cultural context, they're in a social context. So they bring to their objectivity a mass of views and a mass of, in a way, a kind of their own subjective experience is brought to their need to be objective. So in a way, they can't get out of the loop of being an embodied person who's trying to be objective, you know. So in a way, there's a bias comes with that. Their subjectivity comes into the attempt to be objective. So what the authors of Francisco Varela and the other authors of Embodied Mind realised was that they need to have as well as having the science side of things, which relies on something called third person evidence. So the third person is like where you have to be able to whatever evidence you come up with, you have to be able to show it to a third person, you know, to a them. And first person experience is where you just show it to yourself. You know, it's subjective. You say, "Oh, this is what I seem to be experiencing." So science relies on third person evidence or third person experience. So all of the attempts to put Buddhism in the category of scientific and say that it's not really religion, it's scientific, are only to make it truly scientific, you have to strip away everything that's not first person experience, and that isn't really possible because religions rely what's your, people having faith in something based on their own experience. So in the Kalama Sutta, the Buddha says, only when you know in your own experience that something leads to happiness, to well-being, not to suffering, should you act on it, So at that at the Buddhism and Science colloquium, I got to the second day, and they had a concluding discussion where various questions that had come up through the colloquium were kind of like brought back, and the host, the facilitator, was somebody called Dennis Noble. So Dennis Noble is a well-known biologist, and in a way he has the kind of counter theory to Richard Dawkins. So Richard Dawkins, in a way, is saying that everything comes from DNA. DNA is the foundation of everything, and in a way, it's a bit. His book's called The Selfish Gene. So he's like saying, well, yeah, everything comes from evolution, and we can't get out of that. It's a bit things are a bit deterministic, really. So Dennis Noble's theorem is something where biology operates on a range of different levels, a whole load of different levels, and his book is called The Music of Life. So it's not just about the DNA; it's about all the other levels that are there within biology. So it's a bit more kind of holistic, really. So I think that was the reason why he was hosting that the discussion, and he actually at the millennium celebrations he had a model in there. He'd done some. His work was a kind of computer model of the heart and how that works. How the heart works, and that was in the O2, the Millennium Dome, in the Millennium celebration. So what happened in that discussion was that people were wanting some sort of. They wanted Buddhism to give them answers about things like genetic engineering, and ethics around world problems, And somebody asked a question like that was about ethics in Buddhist, and I responded with the Megha Sutta. I talked about the Buddha. Things need to depend on how you see people, or the response was like, no, that's the wrong area. No, we want to know about like how Buddhism can solve our problems about genetic engineering and all that sort of thing. Anyway, so So my own, the thinking I did after that was that I thought, hang on a minute, you've got this first person experience that just is only accessible to an individual, so science can't can't say anything about my internal experience. That's only accessible to me. So this is what's called first person experience. Science can only say what can be observed from the outside. So actually, one of the dangers in kind of thinking that science can explain everything, and you end up with something called scientism, where it's almost like a sort of religion of science that science can explain everything, is that you start to think that anything that can't be accessed, be observed, doesn't have any value. So our inner experience starts to become reduced to something that is just subjective. But I think that takes things too far, and in a way we can end up sort of turning human beings into objects. We're just objects. We're just objects to be observed. Science talks about a black box. So what you've got a black box, and you have things you're inputting into it and things that are coming out of it, but you can't say what's inside the black box. But we're not black boxes. We're not we are accessible to ourselves from the inside. We know what we're experiencing, and in a way, this thing about Buddhism being a kind of science, it is a science, but only in the sense that we can try and make something of our internal experience. We can try and make something of what we are experiencing, and we become observers of our own internal mental states. So science proceeds by. Actually, I've not said anything about the. So I'll just say a little bit about what the authors of Embodied Mind go into, because it's relevant here. So basically what they do is they talk about 3 models for cognition or cognitive science. So basically, a model that's really common, in Western society is something called Cognitivism. So Cognitivism is where we see the mind as like a computer. It's just processing information. So this is really common, And when you get books like The Buddha's Brain, or you get people talking about, I see it quite a lot these days, doing a meditation is doing a mind hack. I find that really kind of horrible and repulsive. The idea that meditation is like a hack, is like hacking your brain or something. It's all about the brain, So this is what you hear, changing our brains and all this sort of thing. So this comes from this idea of cognitivism, the mind as a computer. So that's one very common view around, that the mind is a computer, and in a way, it can everything can come down to science. Okay, that's one view. Okay, the next view is that from Embodied Mind is that something called Connectionism. So this is where it's not like there's a linear sequence of things, like everything's scientific, cause and effect. It's more that, and the image used here is of an anthill. So mind is an emergent property. So it's a bit like you've got all this activity in the mind going on, all this kind of neurons are firing off, and but what comes about is a product of all the individual activity in the brain that's like a network. So the idea that the image is used of like a termite's mound. So a termite's mound the shape of the termite's mound comes about through the individual activity of all the termites, and the shape is can't be sort of maybe determined in advance. It's a product. It's an emergent property of all that individual activity. So here you have the idea of emergence. And in a way, emergence is pretty much like conditionality. So it's like things emerge because of a mass of conditions. All the different conditions all playing into the effect that you get that can't often be anticipated in advance. And I had that idea of polish here shines there. You work on conditions in one area, they have an effect somewhere else. You tidy your flat, your mental states become a bit clearer, things like that. So I think this is like connectionism. And then finally, you've got the idea of enactivism or inaction. So this comes back to the idea that what I was saying earlier about the scientist is always embodied. So the person trying to be objective cannot get away from the fact that they have a body and they exist within a culture and a social setting, and that this all is part of what is to be a human being. They're in a lived world. We're always in a lived world. We're in a living world. And we're embodied. So when I've taught when I taught exploring the Four Foundations of Mindfulness, and I was sort of saying that we've got body, feeling, mind, which is all this, and views. This is the whole. We can never get away from the fact that we've got this body affecting us, and we're in the world of feeling and all that. So when people talk about this thing about mind hack, the mind hack or the Buddha's brain, well, the Buddha's brain is just a load of rubbish. What's important is mind, chitta. So mind has these three aspects: thought, emotion, and affection. These are all the ways in which the psyche is active in the world and responding to the world. So if we're going to talk about mind, we need to be talking about all of these, not about attention, not just attention and thought, but emotion as well. So how we work with our emotion is often covered by things like myth, imagination, religion, aspects of religion that Sam Harris and other, Buddhist exceptionalists would want to rule out. Actually, oh no, it's all about reason and attention. So I think one of the insights that I've had around this, which I've not really shared with the world, but I will do now, is that the way that science progresses and the way that, say, Buddhism progresses. So the way that science progresses is that you have, this will all be the right way around on YouTube. You have it functions through looking at third-person evidence. So third-person evidence is where you need to be able to demonstrate something to another person. So you have an experiment. So there's a test tube. You do an experiment, and you measure something. And in science, you measure it, and you're always measuring it within an error bar. So you say the speed of light is this, 186,000 miles a second, plus or minus, and then your experiment will be within a range of accuracy. So you say plus or minus 3% or something. So it's never completely accurate, the measurement that you make. So that will be then presented to the scientific community. And then somebody else will do another experiment, and they'll say, "Oh, well, I've measured the speed of light, and and I get the same result." So So, and a number of scientists will do that, and then it'll be accepted that this is the result. This is the truth about the speed of light. The speed of light is 186,000 miles a second, plus or minus whatever the error bar is, and that's how scientific knowledge comes about. Through the validation by the community of scientists of individual observations. Okay, and so this is why we have all this faith in science, because we think it's objective, and it is objective in the sense of that it can measure, it can make observations about the world, and then give a theory about that, whether that's true or not. Okay, now the way that Buddhism progresses is that we have our first person experience. So I meditate, and I will practice ethics, and in my experience I will think, oh, this seems to work, this seems to lead to a positive result. I feel more happy, I feel my conscience is clearer, and I feel more connected to people through meditating. Therefore, this works. This works in my experience. Thinking of the Kalama Sutta, only when you know in your own experience that this leads to happiness should you follow it. So I know that this leads to happiness. Okay. Now I'm in a community of Buddhists, a collective of Buddhists, and other practitioners who are doing the same thing, and they're all thinking, oh yeah, this works, this seems to work in my experience. So collectively we start to build up a sense of what wisdom is, of what works, what's valid in the religious sphere. So I get to sort of be a part of that collective, and then I make the decision that this works, this leads to wisdom, or these people who I'm around have wisdom, and therefore I'm going to stay with them. I have faith in this. I have faith in this religion. So, in a way, science and Buddhism are kind of completely separate in the sense that one's dealing with third-person evidence, and the other one's dealing with first-person evidence. So, what Evan Thompson's pointing to, which is that people are thinking, oh, science can prove Buddhism is right. It's a category error. So the biologist Stephen Jay Gould talks about religion. He talks about non-overlapping magisteria. So a magisteria is a kind of a domain, like science or something. So domains don't overlap. Well, sometimes they overlap, but sometimes they don't. So science can give us technology, but it can't say anything about whether or not we should use it. So and that's another magisteria. That's the magisteria of ethics or religion or something like that. So so that we have these different magisteria, and so you might have a scientist who, I've got one of my former colleagues from Manchester University, Rodney. He's such a lovely bloke. He's completely into, he's a well-known scientist in Burns physics, and he's extremely ethical. He's in a way he's vastly more friendly than I am. So it's not like scientists don't do first person experience. He really does it. But they are different domains. They are different domains to work on. So yeah, so I hope that's given you a sense of the field, Buddhism and Science, and so this thing of enactivism or inaction, where we're not computers, we're embodied consciousnesses, and this is really important because this informs our ethics. The fact that we do have a body, we do have feelings, that should inform the way that we think about things and the way that we build our world, so that we don't treat each other like machines or computers or whatever, and we allow for humanity. We allow for our humanity, and I think in the COVID crisis, people are feeling this a bit. They're feeling that, are we separating just the disease out from the humanity? People kind of are mourning the fact that they can't see their relatives, because they've got COVID-19 and all that. So yeah, it's like keeping coming back, even though we live in a very science-dominated world. Somehow we need to kind of keep coming back to our humanity and not thinking that science is going to solve everything, but coming back to our first-person experience. What do we think? What do we want to happen? And work. Honouring our intuition about things. As human beings. So yeah, what is going to lead to happiness? What isn't going to lead to happiness? That sort of thing. So that's it for today. I'm glad I've got through that one. Yeah. Maybe I might try and go into it a little bit further on another day in this series. So I'll see what happens. Okay, thanks everybody. See you tomorrow. Bye.